Whenever there's a national conversation renewed about First Nations people in Canada and the hardships that they've faced over the years, well, we should hope that that conversation takes us in a positive direction. One of the outcomes of that conversation is that we see more success, more prosperity for First Nations people, and that those unfortunate negative headlines and stories that we read about that are often the spark for these conversations, well, that we see fewer and fewer of them. That we trend towards good things as opposed to bad things. We see fewer of those bad stories. So we should all, as a nation, hope that that is the outcome of this conversation that's going on right now. However, there can always be a negative direction that things head in terms of more division and more of a us versus them mentality that can sort of settle in the minds of, well, anyone on any sort of side or perspective of this conversation. One sort of positive direction that happened about a year and a half ago, you'll remember there were the blockades that happened just before the pandemic hit in Canada, early 2020, lots of rail lines being blockaded, and an us versus them conversation initially materialized. But then there was a lot more nuance, and people realized, well, hold on a second. We've actually got band councils that are saying, we want these pipelines developed in Western Canada. We want to see this. We want to share the spoils. We want jobs. We want stability for our families. And a lot of the people who are actually doing the activism weren't even First Nations people themselves. Yes, we had these hereditary chiefs who were saying they were against the pipeline, but a lot of the people who were doing the various activism, for instance, there's this group Extinction Rebellion. They're like really extreme environmental activists and they've been arrested and so forth. Well, those individuals, they were not First Nations people. They were just kind of appropriating the issue for their own benefit, their own gain. And a lot of people saw through all of this. And there's this really sort of positive direction the conversation headed in, where people who are not First Nations and maybe aren't traditional advocates for them, they looked at all this and said, well, hold on, what's going on here? We have these opportunists who are trying to seize on this story for their own gain, for their own agenda. And meanwhile, we have First Nations people who, like, they're just regular folks like everyone else who want good things for their communities, for their families. They want jobs, they want success, they want more income in their bank accounts so they can provide for all the things that everybody in Canada wants for themselves and their families. And I think I saw a lot of people say, yeah, let's rally behind these people. We're not buying this us versus them thing. Or if there is an us versus them, it's the little guy, it's the regular folks against these elites, these sort of like niche academic activists and so forth. Forget about them. We all have to rally together. And right now in Canada, we're seeing statues torn down of not just historical figures, but the current reigning monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. And we see all of this, I go, oh man, like that can send us in the wrong divisive direction right now. That's going to really send in us versus them that we don't want. And I just hope we can find some opportunities now moving forward to get back to that glimmer that I think was materializing a year and a half ago, where everyday Canadians were really feeling that they were allied with everyday First Nations people and that there was unity there and that we were all beginning to root for each other's success. I really hope that this sort of divisive moment right now can actually conclude in not further division, but further unity and people really coming together and having each other's backs.